Adventure games are a genre of games that is different now than it was back in the day. Adventure games now might be a matter of mixture of genres or just going on an adventure, fighting off bosses, going through stages, fighting off bosses, and going through stages and fighting off bosses again. This could be the same for most adventure games as of now. There are some that are still a little bit nostalgic, like The Legend of Zelda, and there are some that are not. Now, back in, say, the 90s, adventure games were a little bit different, especially on the PC platform. There were a lot of adventure games that were also like puzzle games and did not play very much like the adventure games of today. Grim Fandango is an example of one such game that played different. This was an old adventure game on the PC by LucasArts that got very popular. Now, it's returning to the gaming world and the handheld world in the version Grim Fandango Remastered. As we dive into this game, we will note that this is compatible with the PlayStation Vita, but is also compatible with the PlayStation TV. So if you want to play it on the big screen, you can either take advantage of cross-buy and play it on the PS4, or use the PlayStation TV. Here is our official review of Grim Fandango Remastered. The plot of this game takes place in the Land of the Dead, which is based on the Aztec view of the afterlife. This is a place where all souls go after they die and before they go to the afterlife. The main character of the game, Manny Calavera, works for a travel agency that gives souls packages based on how good or bad of a person they were in their lives. The better you are in your life, the better package you will get, and the sooner you will reach the afterlife. Over the course of the game, Manny will discover a lot of corruption and deceit going on in the very system he's trying to use as his job to not only get other people to the afterlife, but to earn his own place in the afterlife. Across 4 years, he will go to a lot of different locations and meet a lot of different people, discovering the secrets behind the mystery, as well as finding a certain charge of his that he messed up on. The most important thing to know about Grim Fandango Remastered is that story takes the front lines from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. While there are a lot of adventure and puzzle elements as you play through the game, you will be wanting to play the game based solely on the storyline, because that is what you're going to be using for the entire game, and that is what is going to keep bringing you back. Much like the original game, Grim Fandango Remastered is an adventure game with puzzle elements. Not a lot has changed gameplay-wise with this remake. While there are some extra features, like a director's commentary you can listen to as you play through the game, most of the game is going to play just like it did back in the 90s when it originally came out. Progressing through the game will be a matter of exploring, talking to everyone, and interacting with everything you can find. Every single step of the way, you're going to be exploring and finding people to talk to, with a lot of different options as dialogue as you do talk to them. The biggest point of this is that you're going to need to use any and everyone you meet to be able to get further into the game. You will also need to find items that you'll need to use further into the game, which can be found on various shelves or rooms, or can be obtained by talking to people in a certain way. For example, you might need a set of tools to get your buddy on a ship, but in order to make the card to get into the club to get the tools, you have to talk to the captain over at the port so many times, and if you miss just that one dialogue segment, you won't spawn the events you need to progress the story forward. It's very important that you pay close attention to what everybody says, because every single NPC could give you that one hint you have to what you need to do next. Because the game goes through the story in 4 different years, there are a lot of different environments you can explore, so even though you'll be doing the same thing over and over with exploring, talking to people, finding items, using items, etc., etc., it will all be different and new, because the characters will very rarely be the same, other than the buddy you have with you for pretty much the entire game, and all the environments will also be different, so it's always like you're having something fresh each time a new year begins. The biggest learning curve you're going to have is how you play the game. Not only are you looking for items, but you might have to do specific things to the items before you can use them properly. You can find a deck of cards on Manny's desk, but you might need to take a card out of the deck, punch holes in it, and use it at a specific location to be able to progress the story forward. A lot of these things are not told to you right away. There are little hints in dialogue from NPCs, but a lot of the things you need to do, you need to think about and figure out for yourself. The game's not going to tell you how to play the game. You're going to have to figure out or use a guide. Now, I did use a guide for a few parts in the early parts of the game, but the further you go into the game, the easier it's going to get. The puzzles don't get easier, but the gist and the flow of the game you will become used to, and it will be easier to figure things out. Regardless, though, there is a fairly high amount of difficulty in the game to learn the system and to search and know where to look. All in all, Grim Fandango Remastered should take you about 12 to 15 hours to beat the game. If you have a particularly hard time with the puzzles, you could probably change that to about 15 to 20 hours. There is no huge amount of New Game Plus features in the game, but there is the director's commentary if you'd like to play through the game normally once and then play through it again with the commentary attached. All in all, though, it's a fairly lengthy game for what it is. As far as the visual presentation is concerned, they've made some improvements in the remaster over the original game. First of all, the pre-rendered visual backgrounds are still here in the game and they look just as flawless as they did before. The character models, though, in the original game had a lot of jagged edges around them. This has been smoothed out a lot and it is presented very uniquely. As you play through the game, all you have to do is tap the select button and the renders will change from the original version of the game to the remastered version of the game, where you can really see how they've used shadows to their advantage to make all of the character models look a lot better. What we will need to address, though, is how the game plays. There are a few little hiccups in the game that you'll want to know about. First of all is lag and slowdown. When you're in certain areas of the game, you will notice a lot of slowdown as you progress through the area. This is most apparent in the port town of Rubikava that is visited in Year 2. As you progress through certain stages and certain areas, you will see a lot of slowdown. It's not going to be anything game-breaking, but it's going to be very noticeable. The odd part about this is that these areas won't have as much lag if you change your visual style. If you change from original to remaster, or remaster to original in an area where you're noticing lag, it'll get noticeably better. It's not always the original that makes it better, it's not always the remaster that makes it better, which makes this very confusing. The other thing you should know about is the amount of glitches in the game. Anybody who's played the original Grim Fandango will know that the game was known to have bugs and glitches on it. However, in the remaster, there are bugs and glitches in the form of freezing and crashing. From the very first day that it was available on the PlayStation Network, people have been reporting various issues with it. Some people had crashes, some people had freezes, some people had both, and the areas where these happened was never the same. Some people had it crash every time you saved until they re-downloaded the game. Some people had it crash on them on transitions from one cutscene to another. I myself had it crash and freeze on me a few times, noticeably when going from one year to another. It was never the same twice because whenever I reloaded the game and tried again, it worked fine, but it is something you should know about. Grim Fandango makes a decent return to the gaming world as well as a good introduction to the handheld world. On the downside, the game has been known to have some freezing and crashing glitches, as well as lag in some areas, notably in Rubikava in Year 2. Past this is a fun and challenging puzzle and adventure game that old and new gamers should be able to enjoy. PlayStation Vita Reviews rates Grim Fandango Remastered a 7 out of 10.